Thank you very much for tuning in. We're going to talk about the constitutionality, right? So basically, I was living in Clare, right, in Davie County, Nova Scotia. Clare, I was born there, right? So Clare is my hometown, and I speak Acadian French and all this stuff. And I'm an Acadian person, right? My family is from Acadie. Acadie is a French, colony, if you will. But we've it was kind of emancipated from the French, government system, and we tried to make our own country. But basically, the English came and they took over our land. Right, so they're trying to eradicate us. They're trying to assimilate us, and basically, they're trying. Oh, this month, oh, it's the Acadian month or whatever. No, they're not. If it really was the Acadian month, they would, get their dirty claws out of our pockets and quit funding abortions with our tax dollars. Right, they're funding tax. We have to pay, right? If we want to live in our own home, we have to pay for we have to pay for property taxes, right? And it's expensive, right? Thousands of dollars for just a simple home for property taxes. Well, it pays for garbage collections and sidewalks. No, it doesn't. It pays for killing babies. That's what it pays for. Yeah. And if you don't believe me, just look at the budget, right? Look at the budget. Oh, it goes to the Clare Health Center. Well, what do Clare Health Centers do? Well, they do a gender. How should I say, confusion or gender reassignment, or how should I say, how did they word that? Uh, affirmation. There you go. Yeah, gender affirmation care. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so now gender affirmation is being paid for by taxpayer dollars. Oh, whatever. I don't really care about that. If you want to become a girl, well, you can try. And if you're a woman, you're very very beautiful woman, and you want to forfeit your natural feminine beauty and purity and just there's nothing more beautiful than a woman. I'm sure if you're a man you can agree. Well, then you can try to become all manly and everything by these drugs that they give you, right? So, well, whatever. I mean, then I don't really care about that, to be honest. You want to become a man, you want to try to become a man or try to become a woman. I mean, gender affirmation, I don't really care. That's I mean, who cares, man? Who cares? Gender affirmation. I don't really want to pay for that with my tax dollars, but I don't really care. And then you got MAID. Okay, MAID, so medical assistance in dying, right? Apparently the word on the street is extremely painful, right? They don't have an anesthesiologist about that, right? So they don't have an anesthesiologist to the depth of consciousness monitoring, right? My uncle was actually a real doctor. My uncle's actually a real doctor. My grandma Lorraine's brother, Nog Geral. All right, so Nog Geral was living in Yarmouth, and he was an anesthesiologist. If you remember, my uncle Nog Grabar was a doctor, kind of like just a low-level kind of guy, just a regular doctor. But my other uncle, Nog Geral, was a high-level anesthesiologist, very, very respected guy. Anesthesiology is a great medical discipline. Anyway, so you get the depth of consciousness monitoring here. So you really want to make sure that the guy's put to sleep when you want to put him to death, right? But they don't do that. So they just kind of just hope for the best. But it works, don't get me wrong. Yeah, it's painful and all this stuff. The guy's awake, he's screaming, he's paralyzed, he's screaming to the top of his lungs, but he can't scream to the top of his lungs because he's paralyzed. But it's very, very painful. And then it's okay because he dies. Job well done. All right. So the medical assistants in dying. I don't really care because that's not really, whatever. Okay, it's a slippery slope, but I don't really care about that. What I care about is the abortion issue, right? And you got medical and surgical abortions, which are just barbaric and grotesque, but at the heart of the issue here is the birth control, right? The IUD. These are pessaries, right? Contrary to the Hippocratic Oath, right? So the pessary, right? So don't put a pessary in a woman. That's exactly what the Hippocratic Oath says, but they're going and they're putting all kinds of pessaries in all kinds of women, right? So what does that do? It doesn't actually prevent the pregnancy. It doesn't actually prevent the conception. And they all know that. Everybody knows that, but it just prevents a baby from being born alive and all this stuff. So let me put it to you this way. A real doctor, right, were to understand that the woman will get pregnant when the prescription pad says, some birth control pills. Here's a birth control pill. And then, so the duty of the doctor is to say, listen, you're probably going to get pregnant. And it is not going to happen 100% of the time, but it will happen. There's a good possibility that it will happen at some instances. And then, so what actually happens is that so the baby, right, which will go through the zygote, right? A zygote is the first when the sperm will meet the oocyte, the egg. there's a zygote stage, and then there will be the morula stage, and then the morula stage there will be the actual blastocyst, right, which is there's no, I'm not dehumanizing a baby. It's a baby boy, baby girl, right? Because there's a new zygotic genome activation that is occurring. So then, the baby will fail to implant because of the mechanism of the birth control pill, right? So then the doctor's duty is to say, the baby will die because, it's a real baby. The baby will die because of the stage of implantation will fail, right? The implantation will fail at the later, very natural stage of implantation. The baby boy or baby girl will die, right? So that is the duty. And then now, okay, the woman is this is informed consent. This is literally what it is. Let's say, for example, I'm a doctor. Okay, I'm a doctor, and there's this woman. Let's say, for example, a young girl. Is she capable of informed consent? Right? Let's say, for example, I can see these girls, and I know this because I was with these girlfriends. I was at the time, I was in high school. I remember grade 9, grade 10, grade 11, grade 12, right? We were with these girls, and they were on birth control pills, literally, in high school, right? And it was like a normal thing, okay? So here's the question, okay? The question is, are these girls capable, okay? Are these girls capable of understanding or receiving the actual informed consent and to be able to consent below the age of, whatever? What is the legal age of? Well, the answer is no. Okay, so let me ask you again. I'm going to ask you the question again. Okay, so what I just told you, the informed consent, I would tell you again. Okay, so let's say, for example, there's a woman, a 25-year-old woman. Her brain, there's brain development. She's fully capable of understanding just basic facts, right? Basic facts, right? So you are asking for birth control pills, and I will give it to you, but I have to explain this to you. So the birth control pills do not actually prevent pregnancy 100% of the time. You will conceive, or the baby will be conceived inside of your, it's the fallopian tube area where the baby will travel to the fallopian tube and implant in the uterus. Okay, so that will happen. There is a chance that will happen. The baby will die at the later and very healthy stage of implantation because of the mechanism of the birth control pill. Okay, so that is informed consent. Now we know that. So let's say, for example, the girl is 15, 16, 17, 18, right? Can she, even if she really does scientifically, get it, right? She understands the science of it, can she consent to that? And, the answer I would put forward is no. But, of course, it's a woman's right and all this stuff. No, okay, she cannot consent. It's impossible. You cannot have that. This is a real issue, right? So the constitutionality of this thing will be it's to the top law of the whole country, where you got in Canada you got Morgenthaler, which is basically whatever, and then here in the new country where I am, it's the Section 2, Article 12. We get protection of the baby from conception, protection for every baby from their conception, and that is the constitutionality of this country here where I moved to. And I just kind of found that out recently, but I was like, hey, that's cool, because in the country where I moved to, I was looking for a country where I was not going to be, look at this. You got the babies, these children are dying and dying and dying. And when I try to explain this to you, you got these wacky, loudmouth feminists yelling and screaming to the top of their lungs. These arguments are not even, logical or they're not grounded in facts or reason or logic. And then after that, the police are basically taking the sides of the windbags, right? The country's whack, right? So this is like the primary issue. I don't want to live in a world where I have to pay property taxes. I don't want to pay property taxes to the property taxes, it's so expensive, right? It's so expensive. I got a 3-story house, and I'm literally paying, there's a little property taxes, but what they are using the money for is garbage collection and sidewalks, right? That's what they should be using the money for, is garbage collection, sidewalks. They're making a plastic recycling kind of thing, facility or whatever, and that's what I'm happy to pay that. It's like, how much did my property have? Like $60, $60 US, something like that. I don't know, so $70 US. But in Clare, it's like thousands and thousands of dollars. And where does it go? You check the budget. You tell me. You check the budget at the municipality. I can check it on the website. You can just go on the website, Clare Municipality, and it goes to the municipal government, and then they give it to abortionists like Dr. Michelle Dow, and she uses it to pay for her a brick mansion, but that's already paid off. It just goes to the bank account. It's bursting at the seams, right? The bank account is very, very full. It's full. I don't know what's the limit on a bank account these days. I didn't check if there's a limit, but it's near. It's nearing its limit, right? So thankfully she's getting close to retiring, and she's not going to be killing any more babies very much, but. Unfortunately, those prescriptions can still get renewed. I'll give you an example of a young lady. Okay, so the young lady's name, let's call her, it's a J name, like me, I'm John. John Michael is my name. So her name is, Jenny, whatever, J, or whatever, Jenny, whatever. So she took her, prescription all her life, and she was going with my friend, right, my good buddy. So this M name, let's call him Mateo, right? So Mateo and Jenny, right? They were together for a long time, and Mateo and Jenny were serious, right? They were not married, right? They were in love, I think, they were in love, but something was wrong, right? Something was really, really wrong. First of all, they were engaging in premarital, or I don't know if it's premarital. It's just, what is it really? It's fornication, right? They were never planning on getting married. They're just, getting together and doing that kind of stuff without the context of marriage. But it's okay because Dr. Michelle Dow gave her the birth control pill, and now she's nearing her 35. I think she's 40. Well, she's older than me, so she'd be 40 something. And there's no baby, right? So she took the birth control pill all her life. And now she's got no baby, and the grandparents her parents will never be grandparents, right? So that is a frightening reality. What are you doing here? What is life all about? When you got these birth control pills happening, not only do they actually kill the baby, but it also distorts the whole trajectory of a life. Not only the life, but also it just erases the potential for the future. Man, whatever. They're losers. They lost their bloodline, right? That is the ultimate, punishment for your ignorance, right? This is an ignorant thing. Imagine going your whole life and never, continuing your bloodline. Ever, and your bloodline dies with you. I mean, this happened so many times recently. It's an ongoing thing. This is like an epidemic, if you will, or whatever that word means. But so the whole point about this is, this is scary. Right? This is a scary thing. All right. So then I told my buddy about this guy, Mateo, and Jenny. We were going together, and then I said, "Listen, I mean, you were with Jenny for a long time. Didn't you realize that?" The birth control pill, you could still get her pregnant, or the baby could be conceived your baby could be conceived inside of, Jenny's womb. And he was like, no, man, I didn't even know that. How can that be? So how can all these women not know about this? All these men not know about this? And the doctors do know about this, and they don't say that. There's no informed consent, right? So that tells you right there, the informed consent is non-existent, right? And so what are the consequences of that? Well, the consequences of Dr. Michelle is living a very comfortable and a very rich life. Right? The girls were extremely rich. I'm not, extremely rich, but I do have a, 3-story house, and, it's bought and paid for, but I would never, what are you doing? You're selling out. You're literally selling out. You're throwing your whole culture under the bus. I can't believe she did that, man. It shocks me. It's very, very shocking. I mean, to me, it's very, very shocking. I can't even imagine my own cousin would be doing this kind of stuff. And maybe I'm not explaining myself right, but I think I think you get what I mean. But anyway, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you. Bye bye.